Bella stood frozen, staring at the sharply dressed man before her, his words still ringing in her ears. "Isabella Collins, you've been served," he said, his voice carrying a tinge of regret. The office had gone eerily silent, and for a moment Bella felt as though time itself had stopped. In her hand, she held the papers that spelled the end of her 5-year marriage. With a quiet sob, she collapsed into the nearest chair, clutching the divorce papers. Gradually, the usual office hum returned. The whispers, the sideways glances, and the judgmental eyes from her coworkers began to mount around her. Amid the growing tension, Bella suddenly heard a soft voice beside her. "Bella, let's get you out of here," Nora urged gently, her hand resting on Bella's arm as she helped her to her feet. "We'll find a conference room, somewhere private." Nora, her raven hair framing her concerned face, led Bella away from the prying eyes of their colleagues. The entire office had witnessed the shift. Bella had gone from being the lively, fun-loving blonde who was always joking around to a woman visibly broken in just minutes. Some found cruel irony in the moment, others offered sympathy, but many had already speculated on the cause behind the divorce. I don't understand," Bella stammered, hugging herself as if that would somehow give her the strength she desperately needed. Everything was just starting to get better. Nora put a comforting arm around her, guiding her to a seat. "I don't know, honey. Did Owen say anything? Did you see this coming?" "No," Bella whispered between shaky breaths. "It's the opposite. Things felt like they were perfect again, like we were newlyweds. I thought he was trying to make up for all the lost time while he was overseas." Nora's expression tightened for a brief second, but Bella caught it. Her mind raced through the last 4 months of her marriage. Ever since Owen had returned from Afghanistan, their sex life had been incredible, even better than when he came home from Iraq 2.5 years ago. He'd been more intense, more physical than ever. "Oh God," Bella thought, "sometimes I could barely walk afterward." A sad smile tugged at her lips as she wiped away a lingering tear. "Everything was so passionate, so thrilling. After I got back from my business trip last week," Bella continued, her smile warming slightly, "oh my God, Nora, Owen wore me out. We did it so much I actually begged him to stop." But her smile faded when she saw the questioning look in Nora's eyes. "No, nothing happened on that trip, Nora. I told you it was over," Bella snapped defensively. Nora nodded, but kept her expression serious. "When was the last time he just held you or kissed you softly?" Nora asked quietly. "When was the last time he made love to you, Bella?" Bella blinked, confused. "What are you saying?" Nora took a deep breath, her gaze steady. "Bella, was he making love to you, or was he just screwing you?" Bella's hands flew to her face, and a guttural sob escaped her lips. "But why? Why would he do this?" Her mind whirled until a cold realization stopped her in her tracks. Could he know? Slowly she lifted her tear-streaked face, horror dawning in her wide eyes. "Oh no, Nora," she whispered, barely able to get the words out. "He knows. Oh God, he knows." Tears welled in Nora's eyes as she wrapped her arms around Bella, holding her as she wept. Nora knew Owen well enough to understand. If he knew the truth, things were about to get very ugly. Owen listened intently on the phone, his face a mask of calm, as the voice on the other end confirmed the delivery. "Thank you," he said finally, after hearing that his wife had been served and that the packages containing the evidence and legal papers had reached their destinations. He hung up the call and shifted his attention back to his laptop. With a simple click, he set in motion the series of events that would forever alter his unfaithful wife's life. "She'll never forget this," Owen thought, as he picked up his phone again and dialed another number. "Hello, Human Resources, how may I assist you?" "I need to speak with Mr. Reed," Owen said, his tone cold and steady. "This is Owen Collins." There was a brief pause before the girl replied quickly, "Oh, Mr. Collins, let me transfer you right away." Seconds later, Owen was connected to Jack Reed, a man whose stern reputation preceded him. Their conversation was short, devoid of any raised voices, but the tension between them was unmistakable. When the call ended, Owen released a long sigh. He glanced at his phone and noticed 5 missed calls from Bella. Not yet, he told himself, trying to keep his composure. Not yet. Back at the office, there was a sharp knock at the conference room door. Nora opened it and instantly recognized the figures standing before her. Leading the group was Brett Turner, the elderly and impeccably dressed vice president and head of the branch. Behind him loomed Jack Reed, his face a furious shade of red, practically radiating heat. Lastly, there was Lila Barnes, the office manager and both Nora's and Bella's direct supervisor. "Miss Carter," Mr. Turner addressed Nora, his expression grave. "We need to speak with Miss Collins now. Thank you for your help, but please return to your desk." Without another word, the three entered the room, and Nora slipped out quietly, closing the door behind her. "Miss Collins, we have a situation," Mr. Turner began solemnly. Bella hurried across the parking lot, her vision blurred with tears, clutching the manila envelope Jack Reed had handed her. Inside were photographs, devastating images of her and Liam Jenkins, the business consultant from the third floor. Reed had summarized his conversation with Owen, explaining that Owen was threatening to expose the company's failure to enforce their code of conduct. He had warned that Owen intended to confront Bella at home before deciding whether to pursue legal action. Reed also informed her that a meeting with Liam was next on the agenda, but suggested she get home and talk to her husband before things spiral out of control. He'd added that they would be discussing her future at the company the next day after her conversation with Owen. Tears streamed down Bella's face as she struggled to locate her car. The sunlight reflected off the sea of vehicles, making it harder to distinguish one from another. But her black Hyundai Santa Fe should have been easy to spot. The fights with Owen about leasing the car flashed in her mind. He'd finally relented just before his last deployment to Afghanistan. She slid into the driver's seat, wiped her eyes, and put on her sunglasses. Starting the engine, she pulled out of the lot, unaware of the man in an old Chevy sedan nearby, who quietly lifted his phone to make a call. "Thanks, Bill," Owen said smoothly. "No, that's all. Make sure Scott knows you all did excellent work, and the bonus is well earned. I appreciate it. Goodbye." Owen gazed at his laptop, letting out another long breath. Just one more call, he reminded himself. One more, and there would be no going back. But why would he even want to go back? There was nothing left for him now, just the shattered remains of a marriage and the searing betrayal of the woman he once loved. With a resigned shake of his head, Owen reached for a prepaid phone. This final call had to remain untraceable. He dialed quickly, his face an impassive mask. The phone rang once, then twice. A third ring, followed by a soft click, and then silence. Owen sat there, emotionless, watching the video feed on his laptop. Minutes passed, and finally, a single tear traced a path down his cheek. Bella pulled her large SUV onto the interstate, groaning in frustration as the sea of rush-hour traffic stretched before her. She'd hoped to beat the worst of it, but no such luck. She slammed her hands on the steering wheel in irritation. At this rate, her usual 30-minute drive home was going to take well over an hour. As the traffic crawled, her thoughts drifted to her crumbling marriage. Owen had found out about the affair. Before Iraq, maybe he could have forgiven her. But now, the damning photos were taken while he was away in Afghanistan. Bella sobbed, thinking about what he must be feeling. Despite how slim the chances were, she had to try and salvage their marriage. After all, she still loved him. "Though you have a funny way of showing it, don't you?" she scolded herself. Cheating on him not just once, but during both deployments when he was serving overseas. She shook her head sharply, trying to push away the guilt, but the tears kept coming. Trust had never been easy for Owen. His childhood had been rough. His father abandoned him and his mother when he was just a boy, and his mother was an alcoholic. In the 5 years they'd been married, Bella had only seen his mother twice, once at their wedding and once after their son was born. It had taken Owen years to trust Bella, and now... When they met in college, Bella knew he was a soldier. She thought she had come to terms with that. Owen had already served 2 years of active duty and was working toward his engineering degree. They dated for a year before Owen proposed. She could still remember her father's reaction clearly. "No, Bella, it's not about Owen," her father had told her. "I think he'll be a great husband. I just don't know if you're cut out to be a military wife. Don't get upset, honey, but it's tough to be a good spouse when your partner is gone for a year." Troy Hayes, her father, had served 4 years in the Navy when Bella was young. She remembered the arguments between her parents during those years. She'd always known her dad didn't want that for her. That struggle. That distance. "You were right, Daddy," she thought, wiping away her tears. "You were so right. I'm a terrible soldier's wife." They had settled into a nice starter home, and Owen had landed a great engineering job. Everything seemed perfect, until Uncle Sam called again. When Owen received news of his deployment, Bella had lashed out at him, accusing him of abandoning her. To make matters worse, she was already 4 months pregnant when he left for Iraq. As she inched forward in traffic, Bella wiped her eyes, remembering the intense loneliness she felt when Owen wasn't there. Sure, her parents did what they could to help, but the long, sleepless nights had worn her down. She needed Owen to hold her, to whisper that everything would be all right. But he wasn't there. She knew she was being selfish, knew that leaving while she was pregnant had torn him apart too. But that knowledge didn't make the nights any less cold. Her mother moved in for the last month before the baby was born, and that helped. But only a little. Bella and her mom, Lisa, had always been close. In many ways, their relationship felt more like that of best friends than mother and daughter. But there were some topics her mother refused to discuss. Specifically, her marriage during the years her father was in the Navy. Anytime Bella pressed the subject, her mother would shut down and become visibly upset. Owen had managed to come home on R&R just after their son Adrian was born. For a brief moment, it felt like they were a real family, Bella remembered. But the moment was fleeting. He left again 10 days later, and she was alone once more. Her mother had sensed trouble. She had warned Bella repeatedly not to make any hasty decisions, reminding her that one mistake could cause irreversible damage to so many lives. While she never shared the details, Bella suspected her father had cheated on her mother. It would explain the lingering coldness between them. They were always polite and friendly to each other, but there was no passion. It was as if they were two friends living in the same house. Bella recalled how she had battled depression and loneliness for months after Adrian's birth. Going back to work had initially offered some relief. Then she was assigned to work closely with Liam Jenkins. Where Owen's rugged, all-American charm had always drawn her in, Liam was different. He had the looks of a male model. His deep, smooth voice and flawless smile made Bella's heart race every time he walked into the room. He exuded confidence and had a magnetic presence. She knew Liam was married to a wealthy socialite from New York, and their family had moved to the area a few years earlier. Bella had even met his wife once at a company event. She was stunning in that plastic reality TV sort of way, the kind of woman who could easily be cast on one of those housewife shows. The allure of Liam with his picture-perfect but shallow marriage only made him more tempting. A mere month after they started working together, Bella found herself giving in to the temptation. Giving in? She thought bitterly. No, I wasn't a victim. I was the one who started it, pushing the flirting past the line of innocence. When Liam responded to her advances, she hadn't hesitated. A short 2-day business trip with their project team became the perfect opportunity to turn their flirtation into a full-blown affair. They met several more times afterward, but Bella cut it off just before Owen came home. Owen returned a changed man. The carefree country boy charm that used to surface every now and then seemed to have disappeared. His deployment had been tough. She knew he had lost close friends during his tour. She remembered the phone call vividly. It had come a day after the worst of it. The Humvee in front of Owens had hit an IED, killing 3 of his comrades and severely injuring another. Owen had taken the loss hard. On that call, Bella had just let him cry, offering little more than her presence, knowing there was nothing she could say to ease his pain. She had choked up too, telling him how much she loved and missed him, words she truly meant, even if the part of her sorrow came from the guilt of being with Liam just 5 days earlier. The months following Owen's return were spent trying to heal him. Bella held him close, hoping to bring back the man she'd married. Slowly, over the course of the year, Owen began to show glimpses of his old self. Bella was certain she loved him, and that her affair with Liam had been nothing more than a lapse in judgment, a moment of weakness. She knew Liam hadn't loved her either. Rumors around the office suggested he had moved on to someone new, a woman from marketing. That didn't bother Bella in the slightest. She had her family back, and she tried to bury the memories of her infidelity. But just as life began to return to normal, Owen received his deployment orders for Afghanistan. Bella was devastated. 2 months after Owen left, Bella found herself back in Liam's arms. She had no excuse for it. Her guilt was there, but it was overwhelmed by her loneliness and fear. She pursued Liam again, and it had taken every ounce of her charm to lure him away from his fling and marketing. Her face burned with shame as she recalled her actions. Of course you're ashamed, but it didn't stop you, did it? She berated herself. Tears welled up, her self-loathing spilling out along with them. Liam had stayed over at her house several weekends, and Bella even managed to get assigned to another project with him. For a fleeting moment, she had considered leaving Owen entirely. But then reality hit. She, Adrian, and her parents made the tense trip to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to see Owen during his R&R. The drive there was uncomfortable. Bella was certain her parents suspected the affair, though they hadn't confronted her about it yet. But the moment she saw Owen, all her worries faded away. When he held her and kissed her, it reminded her of why she had fallen in love with him in the first place. They spent every moment they could together, reigniting their connection and rebuilding their family. Bella smiled weakly at the memory. Owen had been so tender, so passionate, and so loving. She had sworn to herself during that visit that she would remain faithful to him for the rest of her life. Then, Owen told her something that made her weep openly. He had decided to resign his commission after this final tour. Within 4 months of returning from Afghanistan, he planned to become a civilian. He promised her that he would never leave her again, that they would finally have the chance to be a real family. After that trip to Fort Bragg, Bella cut all ties with Liam, despite his frustration and anger. She threw herself completely into preparing for Owen's return. She even began seeing a doctor about her anxiety and loneliness. The diagnosis was clinical depression, and Bella started counseling and taking medication. As the months passed, she grew stronger, both mentally and emotionally. Every day she vowed to herself that she would make up for her mistakes by being the best wife Owen could ever hope for. When Owen came home several months later, Bella kept her promises. She held nothing back, not her love, her attention, or her body. She had been completely devoted to him. That was 4 months ago. But now, Nora had been right. Something had felt different since Owen's return this time. He was more closed off, not as open with his heart. Bella had assumed it was because of everything he had gone through overseas. But now she realized, with dread settling in her chest, that he had likely already known about the affair. The thought terrified her. Owen sat by the window, watching as the rain gently drizzled down on the unlucky people caught in the sudden shower. He could tell it wouldn't last long. Soon the sun would break through. But not soon enough, Owen mused grimly. No, not nearly soon enough. His eyes shifted back to the little dot on his laptop screen, tracking the movement of his wife's SUV. After being stuck in traffic, she was finally making some progress. He glanced at his watch and let out a deep sigh. It was time to make the call. Depending on how this conversation went, it could be the last time he ever spoke to the woman he had loved so deeply for the past 6 years. Bella's grip tightened on the steering wheel when her phone rang. A quick glance told her it was Owen. She whispered a short prayer, took a shaky breath, and answered. "Owen?" she asked, her voice soft, trying to hold back her tears. "Yeah, it's me," came his reply. "Please," Bella began, her voice breaking. "Please let me explain. Let me tell you how sorry I am. Baby? Owen?" Silence. "Sweetheart?" she asked, her voice tinged with hope. "Are you still there?" "Yeah, for the moment," he replied curtly, his tone sharp and icy. "Honey, where are you? Are you at home with Adrian?" she asked, trying to gather herself. "I don't have a home, Bella," he said, his voice cracking with pain for just a fleeting second. "You took care of that." "Where are you?" she asked again, her voice trembling as she fought back tears. "It doesn't matter. I'm just here, waiting." "For me?" Bella's voice broke as she clung to the hope. "Like you, honey?" Bella couldn't hold back the sob that escaped her. She had never heard such raw pain and anger in his voice before, and certainly never directed at her. "Owen, please," she begged. "I'm so sorry. I love you, baby. Please just let me talk to you." "There's not much left to talk about, Bella, is there?" Owen's voice had steadied, cold and detached once again, showing little emotion. "Owen, please. There's so much I need to say. I know I've messed up terribly, but I need to talk to you. I love you, baby. Only you," Bella pleaded, her voice cracking. The line was silent for a moment. Then Owen's voice came through, cold and distant. "All right, Bella, say what you need to, but I doubt it'll change a damn thing. You've been sleeping with another man while I was away, not once, but many times. What on earth could you say that would make any difference? Please, Owen. For us, for our sake, don't give up on us before I can see you. Please, baby," she begged through her tears. "Don't give up?" Owen hissed, his voice filled with bitterness. Like you did on us, she shouted, the desperation in her voice rising. I never gave up on us, baby. I know it doesn't look like it, but I swear I haven't. You're the one I want. I was lonely and scared. I know it's no excuse, but that's how I felt. I've made a terrible mess of things, but I still love you, and I believe in us. I really do. Are you serious? Owen asked incredulously, a pause hanging in the air as he absorbed her words. You're telling me you didn't give up on us when you were with him? What about when you were moaning his name, when you took him into our bed? How do you even begin to believe that wasn't giving up on us? Bella's sobs grew louder as she wiped her face, trying to focus on the road and get to him as fast as she could. Maybe if they were face to face, he'd see the remorse she felt. Maybe there would still be hope. Owen continued, his voice hard and bitter. I got the proof I needed, my cheating wife having her fun while I was in Afghanistan. Lucky for both of us, I was overseas when I found out. If I'd been stateside, I don't know what I would have done, but after 3 months of thinking it over, my plans changed. Damn it, Bella. I wanted to hurt you. His voice cracked slightly, betraying his pain. Owen, I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice shaking. After a long pause, Owen sighed. This is it, Isabella. This will be our last conversation. If we get disconnected or put on hold, there won't be a second chance. No, Owen, please, she begged, her voice rising in panic. We can go to counseling. We can work through this, baby. We can fix it. He ignored her plea. There are a few things you need to know before you get home. First, I've emptied all our accounts and maxed out the credit cards. I figured after everything, I'd return the favor. Bella gasped in shock. You can keep the house, Owen continued, his voice steady. I packed what I wanted. It all fit into one suitcase. You can also keep your SUV, though I'm not sure how you'll afford it after you're fired tomorrow. Owen, no, Bella whispered, her heart breaking. I've sent those pictures to your coworkers, our friends, your family, even the church. Plus, I submitted them, along with some videos, to a few adult sites. I'm sure you'll be quite popular soon. Why wouldn't you wait until we talked? She cried, her voice shaking with disbelief. I did wait, Bella. I waited 4 months after I came back, but you didn't say a word. And you wouldn't have if you hadn't been caught. Isn't that right? He asked, his voice icy. She had no answer. He was right. As for your little boy toy, Owen sneered, I almost paid him a visit. But after meeting with his wife, I don't think it's necessary. That woman's got some connections. Let's just say Liam might not get through the year without an accident. You might want to warn him. She'll probably come after his mistresses too. That includes you, doesn't it? Owen, please, Bella pleaded, her voice filled with fear. Give me a chance to make this right, please. Bella's phone beeped. She glanced at it, seeing Amanda Green's number. Owen, it's Mrs. Green from next door calling. I told you, if we get disconnected, we're done, he said coldly. Startled, Bella replied softly. Okay, baby. I just thought something might have happened to Adrian. Adrian's fine, Owen said, his voice softening. He's with me, asleep right now. Bella sighed in relief and let the call go to voicemail. Speaking of Liam's wife, Mila, Owen said, his voice calm again. While you and your lover were having your fun last week, Bella's phone buzzed again, this time showing Mrs. Bennett's number from down the block. Sweetheart, it's Mrs. Bennett. Are you sure Adrian's okay? She asked, panic rising in her voice. Yes, Bella. Adrian and I are perfectly fine, Owen said, a strange, eerie tone in his voice. Then he chuckled, and Bella's blood ran cold. Anyway, back to Mila. While you were with your lover, I spent 2 days getting to know her. Intimately. Bella gasped, feeling both fury and heartache. I'd love to tell you she's better in bed than you, but the truth is she's not, Owen continued, his voice cutting. Between her whining and bitching about every little thing, she took the fun out of it. I bet your lover would agree. So, congratulations, Bella. You've earned the Best Slut award. Owen, stop it, please, Bella cried. Just stop. Her sobs grew louder. Bella pounded her fists against the steering wheel, shouting curses at the cars crawling along beside her. Her frustration boiled over, but slowly she regained control, wiping the tears from her face. All right, Owen, she whispered, her voice trembling. You've won. You've broken me. Is that what you wanted? She paused, waiting for any response, but there was nothing but silence on the other end. But I still love you, she continued softly. I know there's no excuse for what I did, but all I'm asking for is a chance to explain. There's more you need to know, medical things. If you ever loved me, please just meet with me. Please, baby. Medical reasons? Owen sneered. What's it going to be? Postpartum depression? Clinical depression? Bipolar disorder? Or maybe PTSD? His voice dripped with sarcasm. It doesn't matter, does it? You still went and slept with another man while I was being the faithful fool overseas. Bella cried silently as he went on. How I found out doesn't matter anymore. What does matter is that I did. So I hired people to keep an eye on you. They tapped phones, planted cameras all over the house, even in our bedroom. Oh, Owen, she sobbed. Do you really hate me so much that you do this? Isn't there even a tiny bit of love left in you? There was, he replied quietly, until I saw that video. You remember, Bella? The one where Adrian walked in on you two in our bed? Bella gasped, her heart sinking as tears welled up again. Oh no, please no. Owen's voice tightened, thick with emotion. Imagine how it felt, watching my son call another man daddy, as you both laughed and let him climb into bed with you. I knew, right then, I'd never let that bastard be part of my son's life. Damn you, his voice cracked, barely holding back the pain. I guess it's a good thing I didn't see that video before we spent time together at Fort Bragg. It destroyed me, Bella. I almost lost it. And Afghanistan isn't the kind of place you can afford to lose control. Owen glanced at the screen in front of him, seeing that Bella was nearly home. A cruel smirk spread across his face. As for hurting you, I haven't even started yet. I've still got... He paused when he heard Bella's horrified gasp. Oh my God, she whispered, her voice filled with dread. A few surprises left, Owen finished coldly. Bella pulled the SUV to the side of the road, staring in shock as flames engulfed what had once been their home. Like I said, Bella, Owen said icily, the house and everything inside it is yours. Bella's body trembled, her mind struggling to comprehend the scene in front of her. Owen, what have you done? She screamed, her voice shaking. That's a rhetorical question, isn't it? Owen said with a smug chuckle. I was trained to build things in war zones, Bella. Think I wouldn't know how to take them apart? Where's Adrian? She screamed, panic gripping her. Where the hell is my son? Our son, Owen corrected, his voice mocking. He's sitting right here, sound asleep in his car seat. So tell me, Bella, did you see the message I left in the front yard? What? She stammered, barely able to form the words. What message? Oh my God. Owen chuckled darkly. I wasn't sure if people could read it from the ground, but the news helicopters should get a clear shot of cheating slut burned into the front lawn. And don't expect much sympathy from the neighbors, he added, his voice laced with malice. I had those photos posted all over the neighborhood and paid some teenagers to hand out extras. Told them they could even sell more copies at school if they felt like it. He paused for a moment, listening to the sound of Bella's broken sobs. Bella, Owen said bitterly, you might want to start thinking about where you'll be sleeping tonight, and for the foreseeable future. Maybe in your SUV, at least until they come to repossess it. And as for Liam, I doubt he'll be much help. Mila's probably tearing him apart right about now. So, I guess that leaves your parents. He laughed cruelly. I wonder how your dad's going to feel about having two sluts living under his roof. What? Bella choked out through her tears. Come on, Bella. You've always been convinced your dad cheated on your mom while he was in the Navy, right? Turns out, it was your mom who did the cheating. My mom? Bella stammered, her voice trembling. Oh, absolutely, Owen replied, laughing. Your dad told me the whole story when I got back from Iraq. And why do you think he'd tell me that? Maybe because he suspected his daughter was just like her mom. He paused, his voice growing colder. But unlike your father, I can't live with a cheating wife. Maybe he stayed for you, or maybe he still loved her. I don't know. But that's his choice. Mine is to move on and hopefully find someone who can be faithful, someone who can love me and be a good mother to Adrian. Owen, please, Bella sobbed, her voice cracking. I can be that wife. I can change. And I'm already a good mother to Adrian. I'm the mother he needs. We'll let the courts decide that, Owen said evenly. Although, I suppose burning down the house and bankrupting us might not help my case. Owen glanced out the window as a young man in a jersey and baseball cap stepped out of a cab, standing on the curb. Owen flashed his headlights twice, and the guy began walking toward him. Listen, Bella, Owen said, checking his watch. There are a few things you still need to know, and we don't have much time left, so pay attention. First, don't worry too much about your job. I'm not going to push my threats there, but Mila, she's filing her own lawsuit, and with all the evidence I gave her, she'll probably win. As for me, Owen cleared his throat. I don't think I'd stand a chance in court, so I've taken a job overseas. I think Adrian and I will enjoy it there. Bella screamed, her voice full of panic. You can't take my baby! Actually, I can, Owen replied coldly. He's my son. Owen, please, she begged, her desperation growing. He's my son too. Isabella, Owen said calmly. He probably won't even remember you after a few years. I don't remember my father. But don't worry. I'll send pictures at Christmas and maybe we'll call you on Mother's Day and his birthday. Since we won't know where you'll be, we'll just call your parents. Bella wept, realizing how utterly trapped she was. Owen sat back, feeling a brief twinge of unease about his own actions. He had no intention of sending any pictures, no plans to call. The idea of her waiting year after year for calls that would never come was more brutal than anything he had thought himself capable of. Goodbye, Bella, he said coldly. I hope you rot in hell. He wiped a tear from his cheek as he listened to her hysterical screaming, begging for her son, before he hung up the phone. Captain Collins? The young man in the jersey asked, standing in front of him. Not anymore, Owen replied with a weak smile. Just Owen Collins. For a little while longer anyway. The kid grinned and handed over the manila envelope. Here you go. Passports, Idaho cards, and airline tickets for Mark Stanley and his son, Mike Stanley. There's also the account number and password for your offshore account, where all your funds are now stored. Minus the usual fees, of course, he added with a sly grin. Owen smirked as he started placing his old IDs and the SIM cards from his phones into a small metal bucket. With a flick of the lighter, he melted the plastic into a blackened mess. He then took a hammer and smashed both phones to pieces, tossing the remains into the bucket. Satisfied, he dumped it all into a nearby dumpster. That felt better than I expected, Owen said with a grin, handing the hammer and lighter back to the young man. He pulled out the car keys and passed them over. Make sure to thank Bill and Scott for the rental, he said casually. Who? The young man asked, smiling widely. My mistake, Owen chuckled, shaking his head. Forget I said anything. A short while later, Owen was at the airline counter, checking in his bags and preparing for international travel. He couldn't stop himself from smiling as he thought about what was ahead for him and his son in the coming weeks. With his new contract not starting for another month, they'd be spending some time on a quiet beach. There was also the matter of the attractive lieutenant he'd met during his time in Afghanistan. They had only been friends at the time, but once he'd confirmed his wife's infidelity, Owen found himself thinking about her differently. He was eager to explore what could come next between them, and judging by their recent conversations, he suspected there might be a lot more than just friendship. Mr. Stanley, the man at the airline counter called out politely. You and your son have a wonderful flight. Mark Stanley and his son walked down the concourse, ready to begin their new lives.